Yes, And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters 2020. I'm your host, Jason Tramm. Thank you for joining us for our new and unique podcast community, which is growing steadily thanks to you. Please remember to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button below. Hit the bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. On Music Matters 2020, we bring you the most interesting artists in the performing arts world in conversations that pull back the curtain and you join in. Here today is Ray Chenez, our first guest from Europe, who will be calling in today from Vienna, Austria, and we're looking at an interesting conversation with him. On this show, my name is Jason Tramm, and in my 25-year career as a music director and conductor, as a university professor, and as an artistic administrator, I've gotten to have conversations with such incredible artists. And it's those conversations that are some of the most inspiring moments in my career, where artistic dreams are formed, where collaborations happen, where we all learn so much from each other. On this show, we take you behind the curtain to join us in the conversation. Remember to chat in questions, and you join the conversation with us as we take apart the current events in music today. You can also find us, you can like us on Facebook, and also go to our website at jasontram.net. So now we've got Ray Chenez joining us. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Maestro. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. It's been too long. I haven't seen you since 2018. Back then, I think you were still based in the United States and your career was growing and you had recently won the George London Award and great things were happening. Describe to us your development of your career since then.
Well, I started to sing over here in Europe just a few years ago, and I started my first production, which was Catone in Utica from Leonardo Vinci, and that was in 2015. And at that time, as you said, I was still living in New York, and we did some projects together even. And then as the production started coming in Europe, I decided to move over here.
And how has that decision worked out for you? Have you enjoyed, I know your career, you've been very busy in Europe singing in all the major opera houses and doing such interesting repertoire.
Yeah, for me, it's certainly been very fulfilling. And not only do I have the opportunity to perform so many amazing things and different things and diverse things, but I also I've appreciated the culture here to be able to take from the culture in which opera was really born in, and also just to experience the energy from the people and their interest in opera and classical music. So it feels very at home to be here as a singer.
Well, you're certainly in the city of music in Vienna and surrounded by, that's wonderful. And we're so happy to see that your career has grown and that you're doing such interesting productions. Tell us, how does one become a countertenor? Did you start off knowing you wanted to be a countertenor?
Not at all. And, I think the story is different for everybody. And a lot of singers now, a lot of countertenors, they started off as countertenors, wow. Even when they were teenagers. Many singers think now, okay, I'd like to be a countertenor. But for me, the story was a bit different. To be honest, when I went to SUNY Fredonia to start my formal singing studies, I was a tenor at that time. And at that time, I didn't even know what a countertenor was, to be honest. So I was a tenor that couldn't sing as high notes. And then when I would try to sing baritone repertoire, I had no low notes. So I spent the first 2 years very frustrated because I could sing and, people liked my singing, but I couldn't sing any repertoire whatsoever. And one day in a voice lesson, as my voice teacher, Delia Wallace, was warming me up, we just kept going higher and higher and higher. And I just flipped into head voice. And I just kept going higher and higher in head voice, just out of some sort of, frustration, because I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get into my high notes. And she stopped and she said, she goes, really, I think you should be a countertenor.
Wow, that's a prophetic lesson there.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a turning point of just 1 hour, actually just more like 20 seconds. And I said, I have no idea what that is. What is a countertenor? And so she started to speak with me about that, started telling me about countertenors, and started pointing me towards some CDs and things like that. And I started to listen, and then I just went forward with her. I just trusted her instinct.
Who were the first countertenors that you had in your ears when you started listening as a very young singer?
I would say the first was really David Daniels.
Interesting.
At that time, I mean, he was really in the prime of his career, and I think, from the operatic community, everybody really, really admired David and his singing and his work, and it was sort of like a new sound of that time, a more operatic sound, and he was singing, he was really singing in operatic productions, and even he sang at the Met at that time. So that was really groundbreaking in that time. So I definitely, he was a big inspiration to me in those times. And I remember also countertenors like David Walker, for instance. I listened to some of his work. And also another professor of mine brought me up to Canada once to hear Matthew White, Canadian countertenor. And Matthew is running everything now in Canada. He's running all sorts of ensembles and producing all sorts of things. So he's had quite a diverse musical career. But I would say those people were the very first for me.
So after you've discovered this new genre of music and this new career path, how did you progress to the next level?
It was a confusing time for me. To be honest, I didn't really know what to do. I felt out of place. I was the only countertenor in the university, and yeah, I didn't really know what to sing. I mean, I knew countertenors sang Baroque music, but I just kind of tried to sing everything. I was singing art songs, and any kind of music that my teacher would allow me to sing. And at that time, after I graduated, I thought, okay, well, I have a career as a singer. I have no idea. And so then I went to Florida State and I studied arts administration.
I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Has that come in handy as your career has grown? You can manage your affairs and work out your negotiations with agents and all the opera houses. How's that helped?
Well, one thing that I can say is I definitely found out that administration was not my strong point. I mean, I can do administrative things, but somehow any kind of paper or something that I have to fill out just makes me so stressed out. So I feel much more at ease just coming and singing. My biggest fear is always when I have a new job in a new opera house and they send me all these papers to fill out, and that for me is the hardest moment.
It's amazing what you can learn when you're on your journeys. And I'm someone also, I've worn a lot of hats in my days as doing many different things, and it's interesting seeing how we wind up where we are. And so take us past Florida State. You did an artistic administrative degree. What was the next chapter?
The next chapter, so I should say that when I went to Florida State, I wanted to continue to study singing, and that's why I chose Florida State, because this arts administration program was within the College of Music. And so not only was I able to study this administrative stuff, but I also was able to take voice lessons, and I studied with Roy Delp, who he really was quite experienced with countertenors, and he was maybe one of the few teachers at that time that had taught some countertenors. And then I also studied with Wanda Brister there, and I started my doctorate while I was at Florida State. So that was the next chapter. I thought, okay, maybe, this administration is not my love, so maybe I can go into the aspect of maybe teaching and singing. And so that was the next chapter. And then we'll speed up. And then I took a job at the University of Alabama, and I taught for 2 years.
Wow, so you really have been all over the country in the States before you went to Europe.
Exactly.
I only met you in New York. That's where we came into contact. And after you taught for 2 years, what did that teach you about yourself?
Well, the first thing that it taught me was, I don't know anything yet. Why am I teaching? That's the first thing I learned. So, I mean, it definitely taught me about working with people. I mean, you know firsthand when you work with students, you learn a lot about people skills. You learn a lot about working with different personalities, different people, and that is very fulfilling to meet all of these different people and to give them something. That is wonderful. So I would say that was a big learning point for me. And then just the point that I need more time before I go into this teaching because I don't know anything.
Well, certainly being on the stage is the best teacher. You get out there and you work with great colleagues, and you learn so much every time out there. There's not a production or a concert I've done where I haven't learned something new. That's what I love about what we do for a living. Is getting to do music is such a blessing in that regard, and it's never boring because it's always different and new.
Absolutely. It's always challenging. Whenever you think you've got it figured out, you never have it figured out.
Now let's go into the fact that you sing so much repertoire. You do such a diverse cross-section of repertoire. Just looking at your resume and your bio and the things you're doing now, you do the healthy, of course, the countertenors do a lot of Baroque music and a lot of modern music, but you really span the gamut. You go to lots of, I've seen some romantic stuff on there, and you've gone into Broadway. We'll talk about that certainly too. How do you account for your huge selection of repertoire?
Well, I trained myself as a singer first and foremost, and what was always interesting to me was to study, really study the craft of singing. And I've always continued to study, and I still study now. And since coronavirus, I have a voice lesson every single week, and I'm singing scales and exercises for 2 hours every day. And I love to study the technique of singing. And so I didn't train myself as a Baroque singer, but I trained myself as a singer. And that has allowed me to sing a lot of repertoire. And it's something that I have a passion about because when I first started singing as a countertenor, I felt a lot of outside judgments. And people had a lot of opinions, in the universities and in the business, people I would speak to, they would say, oh, countertenors should sing like this, they can sing this, etc., which is just based on a small sample of not a very long history of countertenor singing in terms of operatic solo singing. Because we essentially had, really, the first operatic countertenor was Alfred Deller in A Midsummer Night's Dream, written by Benjamin Britten. And that was, 60 years ago, approximately 60 years ago. So since then, countertenors, every generation keeps showing something new and different. And from the very beginning, I thought, okay, I want to develop this further, develop the countertenor further, and sing new things that nobody sang before.
That innovating and pioneering spirit is really encapsulates who you are, and it's that energy you bring to it, which is really exciting. And it's so great to catch up. It's been too long, so hearing that and to watch watching that clip from the Rubinstein, which is romantic, like it's very romantic repertoire, and it was interesting that he used a countertenor. It was an interesting choice from the composer. I didn't know that he wrote that piece.
Well, the composer actually wrote it for mezzo, but the stage director, Dimitri Bertman, had a vision to have a countertenor for this piece.
Now, we're seeing a lot of that these days. That's becoming really popular.
Yeah.
And you were telling me so offline that you're doing a Barber of Seville.
That's right, yeah. So I just got the call, and I was shocked because, with the COVID closures, that I didn't have any idea when I would sing. Actually, I had a production in October and November that was canceled already. And so I thought, okay, when am I going to sing again? I have no idea. And then just a few weeks ago, Montpellier asked me to sing Berta in Il Barbiere di Siviglia. So I'm going to sing my first Berta, my first Rossini in September.
Am I guessing that they cast a mezzo-soprano as Rosina?
That's true.
I guess it would have to be because your voice is so high for it's a very high-placed countertenor, almost like a soprano. It's really such a great register, and the power on the top is really very special in your voice.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
So Berta and swapping, especially in the Act One ensemble, the ending, that's such a special part because she takes in the show she takes all of the high notes, and it's a great and virtuosic finale.
I'm going to be ready for it. I'll train for those high notes.
I want to hear that. I want to hear that when it comes out. When you're allowed to share that. I can't wait to. I'll be cheering from the aisles via Facebook. So what's the atmosphere like in Vienna with the COVID closures, and how has that affected life in Vienna?
Well, in terms of performances, it's like most of the rest of the world. Vienna did start with some 100-person performances. The Vienna State Opera recently had some concerts with 100 people in the audience, and so for our performance lives, it's like that right now. But I'm very lucky to be here because the corona outbreak was really not so bad in Vienna. And with such low case numbers, they've been able to open it quite well. So now we can go to restaurants, we can go into stores, and in fact, they even took the mask regulation away here.
Oh, okay. It's kind of here in New York and New Jersey, it's been kind of people wear the masks in public places, but outside it's been kind of people's choices.
I see. Okay.
Interesting to hear that. Are you allowed in restaurants, inside or outside?
Inside. Oh, wow. Yeah.
How are they? Are they still socially distancing in the restaurants and?
At this point, it doesn't seem to be that way. Yeah, they've almost made things like normal, except we can't perform still. But
what we love the most, right? The one thing we love the most that makes us who we are.
Yeah.
How are your colleagues taking it out there? How's the artistic community in Vienna reacting to this these days?
Yeah, I mean, you probably know also different people are handling it different ways, and some people are creating very interesting special projects, doing things at home, and other people have gone into depression. My approach has been, I've been sort of gone back to basics, and I'm really studying technique very, very intensely. And just, I did one at-home concert, and that was at the request of a TV station. So I said, yes, okay, I'll do it for you. It was very challenging to sing with this recorded piano. That was at the very beginning of the crisis. And, my approach has been, I'm doing sort of secret at-home work mostly at this point. So I'm building things up for when I come back out.
Some of the greatest artists of all time, when they were like Liszt, put himself away for almost a year to reinvent piano technique, and he came out and became Franz Liszt that everyone knows today. He reinvented his technique that time.
Wow,
so
incredible! I didn't know that.
And also, I was on a show. We had a musicologist on this show a couple weeks ago, where we talked about that Guillaume Dufay, during the plague, the worst of the plague outbreaks in the 1300s, he sequestered himself and then he wrote the first 5-movement, one-movement mass where all of the movements were connected. It had never been done before, and he brought that to Notre Dame when he got the job there as kind of his. He came up with that entire concept in isolation. So you're not alone.
Wow, incredible.
I love how history informs us on pretty much everything. If you take a step back and you put things into perspective, it really says, you know what, we will come out of this on the other side. Artists will be needed.
Absolutely.
What we do is important.
Absolutely.
And so it's interesting times we find ourselves in, and we keep on exploring new things. It's amazing on the virtual concert how hard they are, isn't it?
It is. It's really challenging. I mean, because it looks very much like we're doing it together, but really it's because of the sound delay. We can't do anything at the same time. So it's sort of like, you have to just sing with a machine playing something that somebody else did. I mean, when I did my at-home concert, I realized, wow, this is really difficult. My pianist, of course, did a wonderful job playing it and recording it. But then, I'm trying to put the speaker in a certain spot, and I don't know, and I can't really hear it so well. And, and then there's no interaction between us. So if I breathe or do something, it's really a
It's
challenge.
locked into whatever. I'm doing weekly virtual choir recordings at Ocean Grove in my summer residency, and what would take us 2 seconds when I'm conducting a chorus and I'm doing a retard at the end of a phrase, it becomes such an event because everyone's got to memorize the guide track and then react to what I did on the guide track to make it happen, and then we put 60 people together and it's like a game of telephone.
Yeah, and of course you have different people working with different equipment and trying to get the quality put together. That's really difficult.
I think it makes us realize how much we miss making live art music.
Oh, yes.
And we'll be ready for it when it comes back.
Definitely.
So tell me about some of your more interesting projects. Like Broadway, for example. If you go on your website, you can go onto raychenez.com. That's RAYCHENEZ.com. You can see some of Ray's most interesting projects. Tell us about Broadway.
Yeah, Broadway is a special project. It's been in development for more than 2 years now. And I'm happy to say that what I've discovered with Broadway is that it keeps becoming more and more complex. So this is another thing that I'm developing in secret now. And I hope that very soon it's going to be finally in the public view. But Broadway, I grew up singing Broadway music. And that was the first thing I sang when I was at North Park Middle School in Lockport, New York, when I was 12 years old. The first time I ever sang in my life was in the musical Oliver, and I was the Artful Dodger. And before that, I had no idea I could sing or do anything like that, but I wanted to be on stage, and the music teacher said, "Wow, you have a great voice, you should be in the musical." And so that was my first love, was Broadway music. And as a teenager growing up, I loved being on stage. I loved Broadway. And then as I became a countertenor, that sort of just completely disappeared from my life. Because as you know, the Broadway repertoire does so much for countertenor. Mary Sunshine in Chicago. And so I just kind of forgot it.
One of my former students does Mary Sunshine all over the world now. He's
really?
Very, very active. Yeah. I said,
who is that?
I'll get back to you on that. He
Okay.
was in my conducting course at Rutgers University. And
Wow.
He's got quite a career doing
Okay.
that stuff, and he's
Wow, amazing.
You guys should definitely be in touch. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to know about it.
I'm sure it's a very small community when all the countertenors must know
definitely.
each other.
Oh yeah.
So this Broadway repertoire is in your blood. Being an American, most of us in the high school years, that was my first connection to music was church music and then Broadway music.
Yep.
So it's a natural being an
Yep.
American born and to sing some Broadway and to lock that in. And what's it like transferring that to your medium now?
Yeah, well, my idea is that I want to do these songs sort of on my own terms. So now that I have the freedom with my own project, I'm working on new arrangements of the music while still keeping the original feeling, the original melody, and showing how you can really sing these with a trained voice. And also to do it with a countertenor voice is a new way to present these songs. So I want to take this this heritage from America and bring it into what I do now and combine these. And then we also have, a grand vision that it's going to be a very visual show as well.
I've seen some of the costumes. The costumes are gorgeous.
Yeah. So I had the fortune of connecting with Imagica Designs in South Africa, and they are sponsoring the production of the costumes for Broadway. And this has been, one of the things that I was telling you about, how the project keeps becoming bigger and bigger. Because, first it started off, okay, I'm going to sing some Broadway songs, maybe with piano, maybe record it. And then, we started thinking about, okay, maybe we need to have really, really grand costumes. Maybe we need to have some really special visual effects and projections. And maybe piano is not good enough. We need a big band now. So it just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah, I mean, these costumes that we're developing are really special, really unique, and borrowing from a lot of different areas from modern and old. And there's going to be a lot of costume changing.
Fun.
So,
Sounds
yeah.
like quite a project.
Yeah, it's really a project, also showing transformation and how one person can be very, very, very different just by changing look, changing attitude, changing character.
Now you're looking to make this both a video concert as well as a live concert event?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Very appropriate for now, and then you can balance that in your performing career when you're doing opera versus touring with different repertoire. That's a great way to, when something doesn't exist, to make it yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think we always need to create new things. And, to take something that is in our hearts already and to create something new with it is wonderful, I think.
We have our first question from the audience. Let's start in Houston, Texas. Steve,
Houston, Texas. Okay.
deep in the heart of Texas. So,
All right.
Steve from Houston asks, "What's been your most difficult role to date, and why?"
Difficult role. Okay. I'm going to have to say that must be Irina from The Three Sisters by Peter Oetfusch.
So,
Why was that difficult? So that was really my first contemporary opera. It was my first opera in Russian, and in this music from Oetfusch, I mean, he's a brilliant composer, brilliant guy. But to perform this opera, he has the meter changing almost every bar. And so you are just counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in the rehearsal process, as soon as I would walk up stage and turn my back to the conductor, I nearly had a heart attack. So then I would turn around and just, look at him desperately. Where are we? So I had to really learn the exact timing of how I walk from one place to the next. Because if I was off by some slight bit, I would turn around and I would miss my next line. So I would say that was the hardest thing to do to date.
was that the premiere of the opera, or was it mounted previously?
It was done previously. Yeah, it's quite a successful opera. I think 1999 was the premiere,
And
it's had a performance in a good house, I think, really every year since then.
well, the good news is that once these pieces get a life of their own, there aren't that many people who know that role and can walk on and do them.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
How long did it take to prepare that particular role?
Well, it was interesting because I started very early, but I was cast originally as Olga. And then sometime one of the singers changed of the Three Sisters, and Olga is the oldest sister. And then at some point they said, wait a minute, but this doesn't make any sense. Ray is the youngest. Ray looks the youngest of all. He should be the youngest sister. And this change happened 10 days before rehearsal started.
Wow.
So then I nearly had a heart attack again. But I was really happy, though, because it was a much better role for me. And I would say Irina is really a fantastic role for me. And the whole casting ended up being much better. But yeah, I mean, that 10 days, that was an intense 10 days for me to learn the new role when I had really studied the other one like crazy already.
Amazing how hard these modern scores are for us, for artists, and the intervals.
Absolutely.
And what was the musical language of that piece like? I've heard a few of the composer's works, but I don't know that one. So tell me, how would you describe the tonal language?
I can say that I'm not complex enough to know the answer to that. I just studied by help from my coach and also Dennis Russell Davies, who conducted. Both of them brilliant at saying, okay, Ray, now here's where you're going to get your first tone. And Dennis Russell Davies, if I sang the wrong note or something, he would say, okay, in one bar before, you need to listen to the oboe player play this note, and that's your note. So for me, it's yeah, I'm not a talented enough composer or music theorist to know how Utbush wrote this piece. So for me, it was all just practical skills, how I can learn it and sing the correct things at the right time and sing the right notes.
Well,
And but as you sing this music, or as you study it, it starts to make sense to you.
it starts to breathe, and the language just
Yeah.
makes sense. The great composers
Somehow,
make it work.
yeah. Somehow it just comes into your body, into your brain, and the music starts to make sense.
Well, it's a great story for maybe some young singers on here who might be listening to this either now or when it runs on YouTube, that how to learn these scores and how to challenge yourself in new ways. Ray's a great example of that, who's constantly challenging himself and doing many different styles and performing them at the highest levels. It's does each show make you a better musician? Does each...
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I love about singing different repertoire. Every different repertoire teaches me something new. Teaches me new musical things, teaches me new ways to sing. And every time you have a new challenge or something that is new, and you think, okay, wow, I can't sing this phrase, why? And then you figure out how, generally, hopefully with the help of a great teacher, with help from your coaches or maybe yourself, and then you start to figure out how to sing maybe this special phrase, and then it teaches you something, and it's new skills, new tools.
Well, keep on adding tools to that tool belt, and that'll stand you in good stead. We have another question. We go to the East Coast. Jack from New Jersey asks, what's it like to perform in so many different countries, and how are the audiences different?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, okay, so first of all, great thing about being in different countries, I love food, so I get to eat all the different food in all the different countries. That I love. It's interesting when you sing in different countries, there tend to be sort of like maybe a different organizational structure. So when you go into the theaters, there are certain things I expect to encounter maybe in a French theater, and certain things I expect to encounter in a German theater, for instance, just in the way they operate. What positions they have, even just down to how they'll handle me coming into the theater at the stage door. So yeah, I mean, in terms of audiences, I would say there's a difference. Perhaps there are trends in aesthetics for productions. And different countries have some different aesthetics and ideas about what they want to convey artistically. And that's very interesting because the audience, I think, is also looking for some specific artistic idea from the productions.
How would you compare the French productions versus the German productions you've been involved in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I would say that the French productions, they often have a special sort of visual aesthetic, and the productions I did in France mainly were with Raphael Pichon and Ensemble Pygmalion, and so these were early Baroque productions, and these were really very, very special productions. We always had really fantastic costume designers as well. And, Raphael is such a brilliant conductor, and he brings such incredible life to the music, especially this time period that I worked with him. He has such incredible ideas about casting. I think he really knows what kind of singer he wants for each role, the personality. And he helps each singer really bring out a different personality, so that we have this early Baroque music, but everybody sings it very differently on the stage, and that's really, really interesting. And in Germany, I've had all sorts of different things, but lately I've done a lot of contemporary music. And the main productions I'm thinking of are the Three Sisters in Frankfurt that we talked about, and then also the Circle in Weimar. That was another production. I did a lot of performances based on an American novel from Dave Eggers called The Circle. So and these modern productions were also something like The Circle was really a contemporary piece. So it was some sort of mix of, I don't know, maybe in some way some disconnected, not really, some sort of disconnected, maybe almost futuristic kind of look, and especially being about technology. And the Three Sisters, was also kind of, it had the sentiment of the time it was written, but it was somehow, something else. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah.
I love when art, we can see opera, which is an old art form dating like to 1600, exploring modern topics and being relevant today to today's audiences. And the best, I think the best productions, it's still relevant in so many ways emotionally, and even though stories may be older, we find those human commonalities that still are important today.
Absolutely. The circumstances are different, but the people are the same.
What has been one of your most, we have a question from Eve from New York. What is, just asking about the aesthetic of these performances, what's been the most far out there production you've been involved in?
The most far out there production? Yeah, that's difficult to say because I do a lot of interesting things. But, if I think about The Demon, the set design of The Demon is incredible. You saw I think some people, if they weren't late, they saw the video of The Demon.
They can go back and check it out.
No, actually, I think it was just photos. It's just photos, I think, in my video. Yeah, that's right. But, this incredible set by Hartmut Schurghofer is this huge tunnel that goes from the front of the stage all the way to the back. And, it really, the Demon in the story is already otherworldly, because you have this juxtaposition between the demon and the angel, and then a mortal woman sort of caught in this situation. And the set designer told me he designed this like Hartmut Schurghofer designed this like it was a tunnel like to another world.
Oh, interesting.
And you have to be careful not to break your ankle on that set, because it goes up like this, and you have to walk up the sides.
That's like that story with the Met with their machine from the Wagner's Ring that caused a lot of problems with the artists who were in it looked pretty beautiful for the audience, but it was very difficult for the singers who were in the production. One got hurt actually, and something I think.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes the really amazing things are very, very difficult for us, and it's a bit like. I don't know, a tug of war, because on one hand, sometimes the performers, they're really struggling with it and they're not happy about it. But, sometimes we don't know how amazing this looks on the outside. So, of course, we're cautious about our safety, but then, if I see that something is really amazing, then I want to do it. So then I'm convinced. If I say, okay, I understand why you want me to do this, I understand why it's difficult, because it is amazing.
I think that's what makes opera so special is the combination of so many wonderful artists, all with different sets of skills that come together to create one piece of music, as the magic that we give to the audience.
It's amazing, yeah, and I think in modern times we have so many capabilities to bring in so many interesting, diverse people into this art form. In terms of designers. In terms of, there are conductors forming unique personalities, singers. Everybody's taking from a lot of different areas and yeah, we can bring it all together. It's really interesting.
And it's a great time to be in the arts when we get back to the arts again.
Absolutely.
Past this temporary thing, but it is incredible to see what the different concepts can be and how they feed off that. I find that as a conductor, it's interesting. Sometimes a singer will say, "I take this tempo," but a good conductor doesn't just do what the singer wants. Sometimes they'll stretch a phrase because a singer doesn't know they can do something. It's this back and forth conversation, and we push each other. I find that
absolutely.
Great singers always inspire me to conduct a little differently and a little better and raise my game and raise their game. And it's this fun artistic collaboration. We had a big crescendo there. So Ray, what's the next chapter looking like? You're finishing your work. You're at home working. What do you see is next for you? What do when we turn that page and the world opens up again? What is on the next? What is your next? The
next production is Berta in Il Barbiere di Siviglia. So it was a big surprise for me. That's next. So yeah, you can't believe how excited I am to sing Berta.
That's a fun role. It's funny.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to sneeze if that's part of your production you're doing. As she sneezes when she comes in with the laundry.
I have to find out, and I'm very interested to speak with the stage director, Rafael Villalobos, and I just saw now, because it's very new, I was just asked to do it, and I thought, okay, I have to get in touch with this man and ask him about why he wants a countertenor. And now the Opera House has announced the production, and in the description, they specifically say that Berta is a special character, and and he wants to portray Berta as being, someone of lower cultural standing, societal standing, but with the qualities of a star.
Fun.
So I'm very interested to find out more about the production, and I'm going to be getting in touch with him soon to find out what all of that is about.
Something about Barbarousville. I think I've conducted it like 15 times in my career. And
okay.
Every time I do it, it's so funny. It's just such a funny show, and it's eternally funny. Even a traditional production, still there's so much humor if the singers, if the words are produced correctly, everyone does their job. But then you take a new production of it. I think we do some very modern things with Barbarousville.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I congratulations, and it's such a pleasure, and I can't wait for you to come back to the States. I was supposed to be in Vienna doing a concert at the Culturradio House, but that got postponed due to COVID. But when I come in, I can't wait to catch up with you, and
I hope I'm here when you're here.
We'll get some great food together if I'm in town, and we will...
Oh, yes. I'll show you everything.
So, Ray, thank you so much for joining us on Music Matters. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.
And
thank you,
continued
Maestro.
success.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters 2020. It's been a pleasure having you here. Make sure you subscribe below, hit that button, and hit the bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming events and topics. We have some wonderful guests coming up next week. You will not want to miss it, including Joseph M. Martin, the composer, who's one of the most distinguished composers of church sacred music. Thank you so much. If you'd like to support this show even more, we have a Patreon page at www.patreon.com/mm2020. And anyone who does support us will get a t-shirt or a mug, your choice. And your support is most appreciated. Thank you so much. We just sold our first 20 t-shirts. We're very excited about that. And we look forward to keep on having the conversation with you. And tell your friends and colleagues about us. And remember, keep music alive.
Che siete, da vicini fiori, in dono odori, in corpo fuggite. Quando mi ancora, oggi massi spiani, poi poco corteggiani, siete della Roma. Non tolgo il colpito, che non ne fa gioco, e per l'altro il fuoco, poi metto del dedo. Ufficio mio, così adesso anch'io, come vuoi mettere? arreti e buona Orrea. Ma che parlo infelice, spenar più vero nel bene a me non dice. Io le al finestretta di maritarsi al fuori mondo al cielo, con questo poi a te mi spinse in fretta. Argino dunque, alla tua fe tradita chiedo giusto perdono. Se per servarti in vita d'Ercole mi trono, che per servarmi in vita cieco errore, che ciò per me sia morte, morte peggiore. Torna veloce, oh Dio, torna veloce, e dille che sei in desta fedele all'amor mio. Se morrò, sì contento scenderà questo spirito al basso mondo, in alcun tempo mai non ne vide gli Elisi più giocondo. Ma che s'altrui si dona, o il duolo atroce e dissi perfida sorte, la mia destra mi darà in tal punto una sì amara e sconsolata morte, qu'affannosa e dolente quest'alma in approdalle stigiane. Infine qui vi parrà mostra di bene. Saprai tu ben ridir queste querele, perché il mare infedele non mi vieti il ritorno, e di già parli che ben poi agittarmi. Oh, come a così correte al mio soccorso, e non si trovano tra gli armenti squamosi un cor ben che gelato, che qual già da lione di quel meschin garzone senta qualche pietade e salvi insieme. L'ultimi avanzi e l'uldoni mi aspeme. Oimè che il mar con 100 pauci e 100 tutte l'abbia spumante, non targa d'altri furiosa America di vogar quel poverello. Corrate a sì mortal perio, pronto soccorso o cieli, oimè che più tardate